Welcome to the Soul of Medicine. So, welcome to another episode of Soul of Medicine podcast. Today, we're delving into the fascinating world of Jin Shin Jyutsu, a gentle yet profound practice for balancing the body's energy and promoting deep well-being. Our guest today is Jennifer Bradley, who's not only a dedicated practitioner and instructor of Jin Shin Jyutsu for humans, but also a passionate advocate for its transformative power in the lives of our animal companions. With years of experience working in hospitals, hospice centers, and with horses, dogs, and cats, Jennifer has witnessed firsthand the healing potential of Jin Shin Jyutsu to touch hearts and lives across species. Through her work, she's helped countless individuals and animals find greater harmony and ease, and supported others in integrating this therapy into their own self-care and animal care routines. Whether you're new to energy work or a seasoned explorer of holistic health, Jennifer's insights and stories she shares today are sure to deepen your understanding of what Jin Shin Jyutsu is and how it can become a tool for greater well-being in your life and the lives of those you care about, two-legged and four-legged alike. So let's dive in. Jennifer, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thanks. What a great opportunity. Thanks to both of you. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. So I just want to say, prior to us starting the recording, I saw Jennifer on Instagram calming her dogs down. I'm like, Rob, look at what she's doing. So I was sort of stalking you and seeing all the things that you did and found out you were I'm like, she's in Kentucky.
I know.
This is amazing.
There's something about the energy of Kentucky. I don't know if you guys agree, but there was a point where I thought of moving back to California, and I got a real sense that this is the heart in the U.S. And I could be wrong. This is what I say all the time. But I feel like this is the heart of a really important energetic movement for this part of the world. So that's why I'm here.
That's amazing. Could you speak on that a little bit? And are you picking that up energetically because of where you are in Lexington, and my daughter, we love it there and she loves it there. There is something really calming about that part of the state. And down a little further at Red River Gorge, there's some vortexy kind of energy around that. Yeah.
There's something happening. And I can't say that, I don't have these beautiful experiences that some people have, like see auras, like see colors, things like that. I don't have that. I don't have the gift of necessarily feeling the energy around me, but I get a feeling about things. And so I'll just tell you this quick little story. This was around the time when I was thinking about leaving the state. And because I'm from California, and California is where a lot of things at one point were starting. And, it was kind of the place where they were always doing the slightly out there new type of things. And so that's my home. So I thought, well, maybe I'll go back. And then a friend of mine told me a story about going to Africa. He had a friend who'd gone to Africa to go see a shaman. I don't know who or where or what, because shaman's a very general term. But he had gone to have this experience with this, I guess, well-regarded person. And as he left, the gentleman asked the person who brought him there, where is that man from? And so this friend of mine is telling me this story. And he said, the man who brought him said, he is from Kentucky in the United States. And the shaman said, wait, you need to tell him that Kentucky is a spiritual center. It was like talking about a heart center and I don't really remember if he was saying North America or the world, but it was something important. And I got this, how you get that little tickle at the back of your neck? Yeah, I got that. And I thought, wow. And then we have Berea. A lot of interesting things happen there. We do have the gorge. And then there's something about the depth of the earth in Kentucky. We have some of the deepest topsoil, but then we have the Appalachian Mountains, right? where there's traditional holistic use of plant medicine and thinking about different types of plant medicine. And then I had a second experience where I was at a dinner party and there was a woman who was a botanist from France and she came to dinner and I'm sitting next to her. So I was asking her questions. I got to the third one too. We'll just talk about them quick and you can edit these out if you want to. Second one was, so she had come for research and I said to her, so where is the biggest biodiversity on the planet? And she said, but of course, it is your Appalachian Mountains. And that was why she was here. So that was number 2. And then when I was at the University of Kentucky in integrative medicine, a woman came to interview me for a magazine, but she was a writer, but that was her side gig. So her regular gig was that she worked for disaster relief for the federal government. So I've got a little part of the beach house in California. So I said, I've got 2 questions for you. First one is it true that the ocean waters on the Atlantic side are rising faster than the Pacific? Because I was thinking, wonder how long it'll be before it goes underwater. And she said, yes, it's true. And I said, okay. And I said, my second question is, if you overlay, you guys get all the data of where all the storms are, the floods, the earthquakes, all the different, the volcanic activity, all these activities, where is the calmest, safest place in North America to be? Do you guys look at that? And she says, absolutely. She said, you're there. The bluegrass of Kentucky, this region, for whatever reason. And that was the other thing where I went like, ooh, okay. And, and it was pretty amazing that I could do this energetic therapy in a university medical center too. So, all these things together made me think, well, guess I'm supposed to stay. So here I am.
That's amazing. So I grew up in Kentucky, never knew that stuff. However, everything that you're saying, I have felt, and I love that you're saying that because I think Kentucky, particularly where you are over there, is under, I guess, not known or under.
Yeah, we're kind of under wraps, right?
Under wraps. It's really special.
But it's special where you are too. You guys have that connection to the earth and nature is really profound and strong where you are too. And that attachment that the culture has to the land. Kentuckians, isn't it? Don't they say Kentuckians always come back to Kentucky?
I did.
You did.
I grew up here, lived on the Northeast, and then
you came back.
Here I still am.
Kentucky, and when I lived in Manhattan in my 20s, and I remember I'd been here, I had a boyfriend here that I was seeing and ultimately married, and so they told me about this Kentucky club in Manhattan, and they would all get together, this huge group of people for football games and basketball and all the things, and I went, well, we don't have a California club here, So it's another thing. Kentuckians stick together. They travel together. If there's places where they vacation together. I don't know. It's just kind of a thing. Yeah, it's interesting, right?
I'm new to the area, like a few years new. But I hear what you're saying, like over by Lexington and by the courts, like there's something there for me that I feel at home, right? I haven't felt it really anywhere else, but there's something special. But I don't know.
Yeah, and
I got
especially like the gorge for sure, right?
Yeah.
Oof, really special place.
All right. So for our listeners who are new to Jin Shin Jyutsu, am I pronouncing that correctly?
You are pronouncing it correctly. Many people don't. And so here in Kentucky, I say, I had a patient at UK and she just called it JSJ with her little accent. So people call it JSJ. Some people call it Jin Shin, but that takes out some of the verbiage. Jin Shin Jyutsu. I tell people Jin, it sounds like Jin like you drink, Shin like your leg, Jutsu like the martial art. But it transcribes from Japanese to English into the creator's art through the person of knowing and compassion. So if you take out the jutsu, that's the art. So it's an art.
So could you go more into how it views the body's energy system? Could you go a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So it has some deep similarities to acupuncture. We think of energy moving very specifically through the body on pathways as the meridian system. We've named them ever so slightly differently, but this has been acknowledged for centuries. These pathways of energy throughout the body. We don't talk about the chakra system necessarily that other energy practices do, but we do acknowledge that they're there on the body. And for us, if you look at the meridian pathways, they are where the pathways come through to this main energy of the body. I call the main energy of the body that you call maybe the inhale, the exhale, the prana. We think of it as huge, going out to the cosmos. And then that's the big B, breath of life. And then we talk about the little b, breath of life, the inhale, the exhale. And so the chakra system is along that main pathway. And the meridians, and I call this the gas station, energy coming into the body and creating this huge circulation. And the meridians go through that and pick up the gas, pick up the energy from the little breath and the big breath to feed and fuel the entire system. So it's a system like your blood system, your lymph system. Though the meridians talk about these major pathways, I like to think of it like the blood system, where we've got the arteries, the vessels going down into the capillaries, into the cellular structure. So we can look at this from a bigger perspective, but we can look at it also on a cellular level. So that's how we think of it. Now, when we think of acupuncture has hundreds of locations that they use, and acupressure uses a number of those too. This is similar to acupressure, but there is no pressure. There's no movement. There's no rubbing. But instead of accessing the hundreds, we acknowledge 26 pairs of main energetic centers on the body. And they're places that we place our hands naturally. We just don't know why we do it. We came onto this earth and no one gave us the guide, but it's internal. It's innate. We naturally know this system. It's the same for all beings. Dogs, cats, horses, humans, gophers. Now, snakes are a little different. They don't have legs, but there's a lot of similarities with every kind of being. So rather than the needles and the placements, we use a very light touch. We don't think of ourselves as sending energy, which is kind of one of the forms that we talk about in Reiki. I've studied Reiki as well. They talk about frequencies of energy, making the signs and symbols, moving energy in, taking energy out, looking for hot spots. In general, because I've studied both, I think of Reiki as being, when they talk about the hot spots, 99% of the time, it's one of these safety energy locks, this fuse box system of this electrical system of the body that's been blocked for a protective reason, to give us information, to let us know what's happening, to preserve the entire being. And they can be depleted or overloaded. There's all this terminology, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. It's a simple practice, and it also can be complicated. Each of these 26 safety energy locks has a meaning, and the meaning can be a spiritual meaning. It can be interpreted as a physical, mental, emotional meaning. So this is part of that system. Instead, as I said, instead of using touch on these hundreds of locations, instead of using needles, we use the light touch. And we generally stay in place. When I start a session, gosh, there's so much I can share. So when we start a human session, here's what we do. The individual remains clothed. I visit with them. I talk to them. I listen to things like traditional Chinese medicine, tenor of the voice. We do body reading, looking at how the body appears, which is the way the more solidified energy is appearing to us. So we can tell depleted, overloaded. We look at all of that. We listen to pulses like traditional Chinese medicine, and that will tell us not what's wrong with you. It tells us the story of the body. And of course, pulse listening is a lifetime study. I can't say I'm great at it. I'm pretty good at it, but it tells us what's happening now. We talk about the history, but we're looking at the now. Where are we now? And that's what the pulses tell us. What's happening in the body, what the body's doing to move into what we say in traditional medicine, homeostasis, because the body is always trying to move towards balance. We know that. That's healing on all the different levels. So, and then we hear an energetic pulse that has different textures. And that tells us kind of where the body's working, and it gets more to what we call the causal level, what actually might be blocked. So once we learn this, it gives us a starting point. Person lies down on the table, on their back, but we can work with someone seated in a crib, in a hospital bed, in a wheelchair. We can get people comfortable. I generally have them on a massage table that's double sheeted because I use the sheet to slide underneath them to get to the locations on the back because they're located on the front side and the back side of the body. So sessions are about an hour, maybe less for chronic illness, somebody towards end of life, generally not longer. Because once we do this and our hands are literally like a jumper cable on the car battery, it's not us. It's not intention. Really, I think a really good practitioner who is someone who is more in the state of wondering what's happening, wondering and observing, as opposed to, I know what's happening with them. They've got this. This is what I'm going to do to fix them. We don't like to call ourselves healers. We are not healers. The body heals itself. We are facilitators. So we do this and we listen to the pulses on all of these energetic centers in these pathways. Step by step, we call them flows. Now with the animals, we kind of just use maybe one step because they don't like us moving around a lot. Sometimes I think it's just to keep us busy. And then we watch the body. We watch it change. We watch the breathing change. We can hear different things happening, gurgling in the stomach, all these things, these relaxation responses. We look at that. But the body might twitch, fingers might move, breathing might change its direction, heart rate might change. But we're waiting until we feel this relaxing pulse in our fingers. And what I've found from doing this for years and years and years is that when this system comes into balance and we start to feel this gentle pulsation, it's not your heart rate. Left hand does lead slightly as it does in a heart rate. This pulsation is the same for every single being. And it's the pulse of the universe. It's really, we can go there. Let's go there. So we can be really simple and be things like, if your stomach hurts, we can do these things, but also a little different than traditional Western medicine. Say you have someone who is dealing with, a respiratory problem, and we call them projects. Project has a beginning and an end. A project maybe has a solution, and we don't say you have it. We say you're experiencing it. We're going to move through it. Physicians struggle sometimes when they're in the system where they have only 15 minutes to talk to their patient, because it's in the story that oftentimes you hear what's happened. And Jin Shin Jyutsu is about unpeeling the layers of what's happened through the lifetime. We can think of it in so many ways.
One thing in the training of physicians too is to use all of our faculties, even if you have that short amount of time, because from an energy perspective, or an intuitive perspective, and then an intellectual perspective, when looking at a patient, using all of that from a holographic or holistic, truly holistic point of view, the time situation becomes obsolete when you've been doing it for so long. You know, like when we were talking earlier about the place of Kentucky and feeling what it is and all the things around it and the depths and all of that. I just feel that too, that sometimes in medical training and clinical training, I think that's the part that's missing, you know, to turn on sort of that. And I remember, you know, intuition wasn't like just get the lab, prove it by the CT or the MRI. Even now, more so in my practice, I feel like I get a sense or a hit or a feeling about a patient. I can even sort of see it. And then I get the labs or send them to a specialist and I'm like, no, there's nothing wrong. I'm like, so then there became this point of like, do I need that? You know, am I palpating something that may be coming down the future or something on the energetic field?
And that is the key. When I have someone who comes to me, and this used to happen at the Markey Cancer Center a lot, people would talk about they just knew something wasn't right. And they'd go to the doctor and they would talk about things and they would talk about different symptoms, but they do the testing and nothing ever showed. And the doctor would go, you're fine. There is nothing wrong. And they're like, I can feel it. I can feel it. And so they would then they go, well, go see this person. And they'd come see me. And my philosophy of that was, oh, this is wonderful. Has not yet gotten dense enough to be manifested physically. So now we've got something to work with. So there's that aspect. And then Kay, the other aspect that I think that doctors oftentimes have, but they don't utilize them because the general system doesn't value it as much, is that intuition about that patient. Something just doesn't seem right.
You know, I feel like that's something that needs to be brought forth. I was actually looking up some research of how much physicians or clinicians do use their intuition. It's probably not that, you know, the percentage wasn't that much, but I feel like it's such this lost, you know, skill because of everything that you're saying from the energetic field and all of that. I love that you said that because as a practitioner and they're saying, well, I don't see anything on the scan, so go see Jennifer and see what she feels. Can you from using the Jin Shin Jyutsu like that or Reiki, can you sense something also on those energetic levels?
Now, some people have that innate talent. I can't say that, yes, I do, where I could say there is a block here. I hear it in the sometimes in our pulse listening. I can see it sometimes in the physical body as we see, you know, the body reading, that kind of thing. You can get, but not generally, I would say. But as we work together and as we watch the body and, you know, just, you know, it's kind of like, I'm going to kind of go back to the intuitive thing again. You know, we've been highly, highly trained. You've been highly, highly trained. We have all this understanding and knowledge in our brain synapse structure, right? Being stored here. So as we're looking and reading and listening to them and looking at the records, all of that's being put through this filing cabinet. So that's part of the intuitive process, I think, is actually working with the data and the knowledge that we have. And that becomes the art. So for me, that's more of how I think it works for me. When I was at UK, one of the things I did with people, because I had access to medical records, because I was a clinician there, I had the ability and time that before someone would come in, I would go into the medical record and I would try to go back as far as I could just to see what are the main things that have happened to this body. And of course, people get treated in different places and medical records aren't complete. But sometimes it gave me just in my mind sort of a starting place of what might be happening, because there is this layering effect.
And I think addressing that, is really important as well, and seeing the being as multidimensional. And I think sometimes in medicine, it's just the physical, and no wonder we're not getting, the to the deep root issues. How was working in hospice? Has that, I always found that hospice has the right, to me, that container. I almost wish that some of those principles were applied in primary care, except that it's at the end of life when it should be at the primary part of life. How was your experience working?
So in hospice, of course, they had no idea who I was. But again, I got that intuitive hit, called them up. You need to go talk to them. So I did, and I never got the right person. It took a little while. Finally, I got the right person. And I told them what I did. And I said, look, send me out. I'll go to people's homes. I've got my table. Send me to the people who have called you who want a massage, but their body is so tender and they're in so much pain that really isn't going to be helpful for them. And those are the people I'll go serve. And they went, oh, okay. I went, really? They said, really? So I did. And I started going and working with people. And I learned, those people taught me so much about the different ways the body responds, the simple, more simplistic ways I can work with somebody towards their, end of life transition. And I took that information, and just put it with all my tools. So I had one woman one time who, she was breast cancer towards the end of life, and she went into the hospital. Usually when you go into the hospice, sometimes it's for pain modification and then they come back out. But oftentimes it's end of life, and she was really struggling. So I went in and, they allowed me to go in here at St. Joseph's Hospital, was the only place with hospice beds at the time. And she got better and she got out. And because that was her journey. I'm not I didn't heal her. But then they said, gosh, next time, can you come see this person, or will you go see that person? So I just ended up there a couple hours a week, and all kinds of, I have a billion stories about crazy things and fun things that happened there. But I got a better feeling of what happens in transition, this deeper connection to what happens, that this is not who we are. This is just our container that we're living in, that, like an old car, it goes sideways sometimes, and we can tinker with it and put it, things can get back in order, but it does have its process and timing. So I did that. And so hospice taught me so much, not only working with the doctors and the nurses who so deeply know these steps that are taken, but in the people themselves. And so many people who were really struggling to leave the planet had unfinished things going on.
Jennifer, so when you walk in there, people around you are like labeling the diagnosis, and there's a lot of emotion going around, and you walk in with your skill and your knowing, and also seems like, there is this settling in the nervous system, it seems like, for you to be able to hold that space for somebody. So when you walked in that room and were calm and centered and knew what your job was supposed to be, what was that exactly?
Yes. And I think it came with time. Because when I first started doing this work, when I first discovered Jin Shin Jyutsu, and I just couldn't believe it, and I'm studying, and I'm listening, everyone should know this, everyone should do this. I had a lot of ego in what I do. I wanted to fix everybody. Everybody needed to come. Everyone needed to do this. And I can help you. That's pretty egoic. After It took some time, but after some time, I realized that I was just part of the process. And so that's keeping that openness of that wonder, and yes, you see some really terrible, sad things when you go into the ER or you're working with a baby that's been neglected and won't let anyone touch it. And you're there walking into the room with them. And you've heard this horrendous story about their life, with a lot of emotion, to be able to not, you need to be able to compassionately interact, not feel sorry for them, but understand and have, there's a difference between feeling sorry and sad for somebody and having some empathy, right? Okay, here we are. For some reason, I'm here. I'm supposed to be walking this path with you for a period of time. I don't know how long it is. Maybe it's one session. Maybe you're coming for months or years, or maybe you're going to leave the planet tomorrow. But for some reason, I'm supposed to be here. So I do think of that. I do have a lot of wonder. And I do, of course, prepare myself by knowing as much as I can about the person, as much as I can at whatever level. But that getting the ego out of the way, that I'm here to be a part of whatever this is, or not, because sometimes you'll go in and have somebody say no. And you think, I know I could have done something to help them, right? We are meant to help each other. How many times do we reach our hands out? And what if we just knew, even from an individual basis, not even somebody, on their death transition in a hospital bed, that we could put our hands in two different places on the body and the energy would spark and the shift would happen. And we do it naturally.
As clinicians, I think there's a lot of pressure. I mean, more and more I'm thinking, I'm not supposed to doctor you. Like, what am I really doing here? Because just like the ego, am I supposed to save you, like extend your life? I can't play God. I am not God. You're asking me to play God or know all the answers that I don't even know. I think it's really, there's a lot of pressure put on us. And if we don't do it perfectly, then it's a problem.
Yeah. And it's a complicated system. And there's so much to know. And and it's the same for your field. There's all these systems interacting with each other. We are not, separate organs and body parts. It's this interaction. And so we can know a lot about a lot of things. I think a good clinician, a good doctor is looking more broader and more holistically to come to an answer. And yes, it's great we have specialists, but I'm glad we have good GPs too, who understand the whole thing. And, I don't fix everybody, but there's always this feeling, and maybe there's a little less pressure on me than there is on you, because the medical system is set up for symptom, cause, and then cause cure, symptom cure, or whatever. You break your leg, you reset it. But the question is, why is it that leg in that car accident broke, but someone else with the exact same car accident walked away? And sometimes it has to do with flexibility and the amount of alcohol in the system. But sometimes it's about the life journey. And in Jin Shin Jyutsu, we look at these things that Mary Burmeister, who brought this to America, said something very harsh that people don't like. She says, there are no victims. There are only volunteers. And it's like, ouch, right? But what she was really getting to is when something happens in a placement in the body, there's no mistake that accident happened or that result occurred. There was already a weakness in the system, or perhaps it was also a mental emotional aspect that created the issue that happened. I mean, it's a bigger way of thinking about it. It certainly isn't a traditional Western way of thinking about it. It's more of a self-reflection to me.
So this was really, I just had a patient earlier today who said, this is really weird. Everything was going great, but this bee stung me on my left breast. And she was like, it was so random. I wasn't hiking. I just was going to the car, picking something up. And then she sort of freaked out, of course, ended up in the ER. But what she did notice was that she was like, wow, my adrenaline, my cortisol levels were really high. And the ER told her that she sort of crashed and burned because she was running on adrenaline, which we had proven by a previous test. But her opening line was like, I'm doing okay, but I'm just trying to figure out what to do about homeschooling my kids because it's really stressful as a mom doing all that. And I'm thinking, okay, that bee sting, and I told her this, I'm like, that's really interesting that it didn't land on your forehead. And by the way, Rob had this happen.
Where did it land?
On her left, on her breast. I can't remember right or left.
So there's a pair of energetic centers on the breast area that's about 3 ribs down from the collarbone. Okay, so they're the size of your palm. This energetic center is about relationship.
Exactly. And this was about her, from a chakra perspective, it's also about, or that mother archetype of over nurturance of others and under nurturance of self. She's like, well, exactly. I'm like,
exactly.
And it takes like a bee. That's exactly what she said. She was like, no, really. I'm like, well, maybe you can carry some arnica or like some apis mellifica with you. She's like, no, I'm not really worried about that happening again. But it really hit me of how much stress I'm under. It brought up the awareness. Isn't that really interesting? So,
and then she came to you to be able to, maybe you gave her that, okay, here's things you can do for the bees. And yes, you have that high cortisol level. Let's talk about that. But this is the part that I think is so helpful for the individual. They don't always take a moment to start to relate what's happening in the body to what's happening mentally, emotionally with them in their lives. And when we get that connection, like say, if you're like, for me, I'd go, oh my gosh, the bee bit me right here. Oh, it's the left side. That's generational, or this is the right now, or whatever. I'm sitting there analyzing why and where and what might be happening. We can start to realize that our body is always telling us about how it's doing. And if we can catch it early, then we can use what we call the self-help aspect of Jin Shin Jyutsu, where we hold a finger or we lightly touch in the locations on our body. And this is what the animal energy work is based on. We can help keep our body energetically into balance. Now, does that mean nothing will ever happen to us? No. But does it mean we can really help our body in so many ways to stay in balance and become more aware of, because so many people aren't even aware of what's happening here until something goes sideways.
Could you, I'm just fascinated. This is how I found you on Instagram. So could you talk about what inspired you to expand your practice to animals?
As I was learning Jin Shin Jyutsu and I had a private practice and I was at UK, I started playing around with it. And there was a main teacher who would come here and I learned from her and I got very interested and I helped them both through the ends of their life. And so I became certified to do this, but I was still primarily in my office practice. I had left UK at that time. And then COVID happened. And so I couldn't work on people. I couldn't be in my office for quite a bit of time. I took some time off and so I started volunteering at a shelter for retired racehorses and, stressed rescue horses. And because I could do that outside. So I started doing that and I realized how much I loved it, how I loved the connection and the power of it. And I really thought that I would primarily start treating horses because, here I am in the bluegrass, right? And our family has been in the thoroughbred business. So I had that kind of connection. But then, and I started posting on Instagram during COVID. I learned how to make videos because what else were we going to do, right? We were all learning about Zoom and all of that. So I decided I'd learn to do that. And so I just started posting on Instagram. People got interested. I started treating some dogs in the area and cats. But primarily, my plan was to go really into the horses. But then then the dog people showed up. And there's people all over the world who have anxious animals. And so I always follow what I hear here. And what I heard was, these are the people who you're now serving. So I do both still, but everything I do is geared toward what I hear to do next. And I love the animals because no one can say that they are seeing differences in their animals because they read the brochure. Because we talk about that in research a lot, right? That the tone of your voice and the things that they've heard, even the music in the room, or there's been research on giving people morphine in the hospital, and the one who the nurse comes in and says, honey, this one is going to make you feel so much better, feels better than the one who the nurse walks in, puts it up and leaves the room. The infants and the horses, dogs, and cats, all those beings, they didn't read the pamphlet. So they've got a natural relationship. Plus, I started to get a deeper connection with them as they started to show me what they needed. And that helped my human practice because I'm more attuned now to them. So it's been such a win-win.
Do you believe our pets find us and they have their own little souls? And do they feel like when there's issues with that they're reflecting a lot of what we carry?
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes,
And I would say the horses for sure. They talk about that, the animals too. Like I have this little master class that's going to start in a couple of weeks about pet anxiety. And on day 3, the question is, does my anxiety contribute to my animal's anxiety? And people feel terribly guilty about that. But we're in communion together. Yes, that could be true. And there's help. There's, makes you more anxious. There's this give and take. But there are no victims. And animals say if you've got a Velcro dog that always wants to be with you, well, that's because your energy, even if you're anxious, is probably less anxious than theirs. So you're modulating each other. A service animal is modulating a more anxious human. It's their job. I like to teach people a very light touch hold that I use. It's the detox one we talked about for trauma that helps service animals and our own animals with their own trauma that they maybe have experienced. And we might not even know what it is. And even a purebred dog, something could have gone sideways somewhere. So yes, we can contribute, but I also do believe that our animals can communicate with us and our abilities are different. I've worked very hard to understand that subtle body language of both humans and animals. We're constantly communicating, even without words, all of us. The chest and... Oh, cool. Yes. It's the one I have 2 things I give to everybody. I give finger holds for the emotions, and for the animals, I give this hold. So we're on the center shoulder blade. So if we were this way, the spine is right here. Doesn't matter which direction your hand is, but we're just behind the neck. You know how we pat. We stop right at the blades, or for a horse, it's the withers. There are 3 pairs of energetic centers there, but we're going really for the more central one that's about breathing and the heart rate. So it's on the back. So we oftentimes start with that. And then we add the center of the chest. So the woman with the bee sting, right? So there's two on this side, but we're locating this center area that's right between the legs. It's where they like us to scratch here. You know, they like us down on their tummy too, but right here between the legs. Then I add that very lightly, especially if it's a rescue, because they want a way to leave if they have to, or if they're uncertain. And that one there is about relationship. It also is about expansion of the breathing and the chest. But we think about it this way too. Up the back of the animal, or up our back, that's the inhale. That's the receiving the new. And down the front, or the underside of the animal, is the exhale, the letting go. I find with humans, they're pretty good at inhaling and they're terrible at exhaling, right? That's sleep apnea. That's all kinds of sinus type issues. That's a lot of the breathing things. They just can't let go. And sometimes it's too scary to let go. Animals are pretty good at the exhale. They need a little more help on the inhale. So we just hold here. And then I tell people, make sure you're nice and relaxed. And I'm into sighing now, just big sigh, because that helps the shoulders release. It helps your energy start to move. And then we connect and we wonder what's going to happen. And as they move and shift, we move. You might have noticed your dog kind of moved around, and ultimate, I call it tipping over, where they kind of like go lay on their side. You can change your hand position, or they'll get up and walk away and go lay down. That's my favorite light touch hold for thunderstorms, fireworks, at the veterinarian's office, on the table or the waiting room, and car rides. Those are the biggest things, especially rescues in the car. Anytime they're in the car, they think they're going back to wherever they came from before they were with you. So I have people do these proactively, and then they can do them situationally, like you just did. Dog's kind of wound up, wanting your attention. You did this, relaxed. You can see the breathing changes, the heart rate changes, and then he got what he needed and went to lie down. Isn't it great? And you don't even have to, and the thing about Jin Shin Jyutsu, you don't have to know why. You don't have to, you just know, I'm just going to put my hands here. That's the wonder part. I wonder what's going to happen. What people tend to do, we're so used to, we're doers, right? And that's our culture. Keep doing, bigger, better, faster. After a while, they will start to think they should be doing something, and they'll start petting. That actually disrupts the energy. Yeah, it feels good, but it's something different. So I tell people, do your best to keep your hands as still as you can. And if they get up and leave, don't take it personally. They got what they needed. And sometimes the first time, it's a little surprising for them. They're like, ooh, that was a lot, right? And they'll take off, and you think, I must have done something wrong. No, they got what they needed, or that spark. It's like, I think of it like the shag carpet, 1970 shag carpet that comes through you, right? And then you touch your brother and he gets that jolt or gets that shock. Was that your energy? No, it came through you from that static electricity through the body, and it had to go somewhere. So I tell people, I don't know where the shag carpet is, but it's coming through us. This energy is coming through us. It's not ours. And that's why also with Jin Shin Jyutsu, when people talk about, do you take on other people's things? Do you have to protect yourself? I think no. Again, to me, that I take back to the ego, that for some reason we have attached to it. And one of my non-Jin Shin Jyutsu teachers, when somebody was asking her that question, she kind of looked at them and then she said, well, when you're really clear, it will go like this. And she did this. Like things pass through you. And so your body doesn't energetically attach. And I'll take that back to the ego part, for me at least. And again, I could be wrong. This is just like today's thinking, that because, and I'm not perfect, I do my very best to be the observer, be what Mary would call just be the jumper cable, be the observer, not even be the helper. You're the facilitator. You're just putting your hands places and wonder what's going to happen. And so you are not attached to the outcome. Now, it's really fun if something great, interesting happens, but you're not attached to the outcome.
I think that's a huge lesson. I mean, it's that compassionate detachment that you're talking about that's a practice. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a line we walk, right, Kay? Because I think in your practice too, there are some people who are very comfortable with the symptom that they're working with. But, a lesson for all of us, me too, is that what we see on the outside is not who we are on the inside. Inside, we are all souls. We are all part of this whole big cosmic soup. We just happen to be put in different packages for the kind of life and learning we're having. And I'm a deep believer in reincarnation. It just makes more sense to me, but everybody can have their own thing. It's just too many things have happened that make me believe it. And, I feel like we were all put in these different bodies for these different reasons. And I'm hoping that we'll come to a place where we finally get it, that this is just about learning and it's not about one being better than the other at all.
Thanks for coming. So if our listeners are interested in exploring more about Jin Shin Jyutsu further or coming to see you, do you do online sessions or in-person sessions only?
I do.
Oh, wow.
I do all kinds of things. So I have a website, jbradleyjsj.com. That tells a little bit about Jin Shin Jyutsu, all the things I do. It's very simple, very basic. I share and teach a lot on social media just because, the goal is to get it out there. And all on Facebook and Instagram, it's at Jennifer Bradley JSJ. People can find me there. I answer questions. I have a couple of online courses I teach for pet anxiety, but I've got a subscription on, because I know that everybody has different financial capabilities. So I do a little subscription thing on Instagram. I teach there. Let's see, I've got a private practice here in Lexington on Richmond Road where I treat people of all different ages. But I'm always up for this, giving people information, little things they can do. And if they do go to my website or on Instagram, they can find where I have free guides to download for that little hold you use for your dog. And I don't have it up right now, but I have another one, which if I could teach everybody on the planet to hold their fingers related to emotions, and maybe we can do that some other time. This is something for every human, for every practitioner, doctor, social worker, volunteer. If we all knew, and children too, that we could use our fingers to help ourselves physically and emotionally, but especially emotionally, because that's the start of disharmony, starts in the emotional field. We can make such a difference. So I like to talk about it. It's really fun.
I love all of this. I love you.
I love awesome. You too, Kay. I'm so happy you found me.
I'm so happy.
We're kindred spirits.
We are. We're definitely the same soul family for sure.
So. And people are so lucky to be able to find and work with you both. It's really such a gift. And not everybody's ready, as you know. But we're changing things for the future. This is the way that medical care of the physical and emotional body is going. Not everybody's there yet, but we are planting those seeds. And even just having somebody hear just a little piece of it is starting the wave of things moving to this kind of new/old way of working with everything. So I think it's a gift you're doing this and that you're putting this out in the world for everyone.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Soul of Medicine podcast, where science meets soul for whole health healing. Are you ready to reclaim your energy, vitality, and soul purpose? then feel free to head to our website at kcorpusmd.com and schedule an appointment for your root cause review.